At 10 feet, Blackbeard's blunderbuss didn't just fire bullets, it turned the ship itself into a fragmentation grenade. The lead shot shredded flesh, but the wood it hit on the way through, dense Atlantic oak, splintered into jagged 6-inch shards, traveled in every direction at 700 feet per second. You could dodge a man. You could not dodge the walls. Sailors surrendered before a single shot was fired. This is the story of exactly why, what he carried, how it worked, and what made him the most feared weapon on the Atlantic. Edward Teach, sometimes spelled Thatch, was born around 1680, most likely in Bristol, England, though some historians put his birthplace in Jamaica or the Carolina colonies. The records from that era are incomplete, and Teach himself left almost nothing in writing. What we do know is that he served as a privateer during Queen Anne's War, which ended in 1713. When the war ended, the Crown stopped paying men like him. Thousands of trained sailors with combat experience and no income flooded into piracy almost overnight. Teach joined the crew of Benjamin Hornigold, one of the most experienced pirates operating out of Nassau in the Bahamas, a port so lawless it became known as the Republic of Pirates. Under Hornigold, Teach learned the trade fast. By 1717, Hornigold gave him command of a captured sloop. Within months, Teach had seized a French slave ship called La Concorde, a 200-ton vessel with 26 guns. He renamed her Queen Anne's Revenge, mounted additional cannons, and built the most feared pirate warship in the Atlantic. Blackbeard's appearance was deliberate theater. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and grew a thick black beard that he reportedly braided with ribbons and twisted into coils around his face. In battle, witnesses reported that he tied slow-burning cannon fuses, called matchcord, into his beard and lit them. The sulfurous smoke curled around his face as he boarded ships. In an era before cinema, before mass media, this was branding. He was building a monster in real time. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, a long dark coat, and across his chest, a leather bandolier holding up to 6 flintlock pistols. Every one of them was loaded. Every one of them was primed. He did not want to talk his way into a fight. He wanted his enemies to see him and already know the fight was over. Contemporary accounts, including those from his former captives, describe him as calculating and surprisingly restrained compared to his reputation. He rarely needed to kill because the performance worked. But when it didn't, he had the weapons to back it up. And the centerpiece of that arsenal was the blunderbuss. If you are learning something new about the golden age of piracy, hit that like button and subscribe. There are details coming in this video that you will not find anywhere else. The blunderbuss was not a precision instrument. It was not designed for accuracy at range. It was designed to clear a space, fast, loud, and without mercy, at close quarters. The name comes from the Dutch word donderbus, meaning thunder pipe. The defining feature was its flared muzzle, which funneled out like a bell. That flare served a practical purpose. It made reloading faster, especially on a pitching, rolling ship deck where fumbling with a tight bore could get you killed. You could pour in a charge of black powder and ram down a fistful of shot without needing careful aim at the muzzle. A typical naval blunderbuss of Blackbeard's era had a barrel between 14 and 20 inches long. It was loaded with black powder and then packed with whatever was available: buckshot, musket balls, nails, broken glass, gravel, pieces of chain. The weapon did not discriminate. What that powder charge actually meant in practice, at 10 feet, the spread pattern of the shot covered a space roughly 3 to 4 feet wide. At that range, it was not aimed at a man, It was aimed at a crowd. The flintlock mechanism, standard by the early 1700s, worked by striking a flint against a steel frizzen to ignite a priming charge, which fired the main load. The more important number was what happened in wet conditions. Sea spray could kill the priming powder and turn the weapon into an expensive club. Experienced pirates like Blackbeard used beeswax to seal the frizzen. He kept his weapons dry under his coat until the moment of boarding, and then he had them ready before anyone else had time to react. The muzzle velocity was slower than a modern firearm, but at 10 feet, it does not matter. The energy delivered by 8 to 12 projectiles simultaneously was catastrophic, not because any single ball was powerful, but because your body couldn't process incoming fire from every direction at once. Here is what most pirate videos never tell you. The lead shot was not the most dangerous thing that Blunderbuss fired. It wasn't the lead that killed you. It was the 6-inch shards of jagged oak traveling at 700 feet per second. The ships of this era were built from Atlantic white oak, dense, heavy, hard enough to stop a musket ball at distance. But a blunderbuss charge hitting a cabin door, a hatch cover, or a deck railing at close range didn't stop. It exploded the wood outward in every direction. The splinters that followed had irregular edges, unpredictable trajectories, and enough velocity to pierce a throat, blind an eye, or sever an artery. They didn't require a direct hit. They required you to simply be nearby. Naval surgeons of the era documented splinter wounds more frequently than gunshot wounds in many sea battles. The journals of the Royal Navy describe splinter injuries as among the most common and most dangerous wounds sustained in broadside engagements. In the tight corridors below deck, a single blunderbuss discharge could incapacitate 3 or 4 men at once, not from the shot alone, but from the wood it destroyed on its way through. Blackbeard understood this intuitively. He preferred to board ships and fight below decks or at the rail. That was where the blunderbuss was most lethal. In the open ocean at range, it was nearly useless. In a companionway at 10 feet, it was a weapon of mass terror. The blunderbuss was his signature, but Blackbeard layered his weapons the way a careful soldier layers his kit. The 6 flintlock pistols across his chest each held a single shot. They ranged in caliber from roughly .50 to .65. These were not accurate weapons beyond 20 or 30 yards, but that was fine. Boarding actions happened at arm's reach. He carried 6 of them so he could fire without reloading. Once all 6 were empty, he still had the blunderbuss, a cutlass, and his hands. His cutlass was a standard naval boarding sword, a single-edged blade roughly 28 inches long with a wide guard to protect the hand. It was designed for hacking, not thrusting. In a tight space with men grappling all around you, a thrust could get the blade caught in a body or a bulkhead. A hack cleared the space. Blackbeard was a big man and a strong one. In close quarters, the cutlass gave him reach and power. He also reportedly carried a dagger, a secondary blade for when the cutlass couldn't be swung. Multiple weapons, layered by range and situation. This was not random. This was deliberate preparation by a man who had survived real combat and knew what it demanded. Blackbeard's 18-month campaign of terror demonstrated exactly how effective this loadout was. He blockaded the port of Charleston in May of 1718, holding an entire colonial city hostage with a fleet of 4 ships and roughly 400 men. He didn't destroy ships, he didn't massacre crews. He captured vessels, stripped them of medicine and valuables, and released the people. His reputation for violence was so extreme that it worked without requiring much actual violence. The battle that finally ended him, however, showed what happened when the terror no longer worked. On November 22, 1718, Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy cornered Blackbeard's sloop Adventure near Ocracoke Island. Maynard lured Blackbeard's crew aboard by hiding most of his men below deck, making the ship appear nearly defenseless. When Blackbeard boarded and found the deck suddenly swarming with Royal Navy sailors, a brutal close-quarters fight erupted. This was exactly the scenario the Blunderbuss was built for. Blackbeard discharged his weapons, continued fighting through multiple gunshot wounds, and had to be shot 5 times and stabbed more than 20 times before he went down. When it was finally over, Maynard cut off his head and hung it from the bowsprit. The autopsy-like examination of his body counted 5 bullet wounds and approximately 20 sword and knife cuts. The man had kept fighting through an injury count that would have stopped almost anyone else. His weapons had been built for exactly this kind of final, close-range stand. Blackbeard's reign lasted barely 2 years, but those 2 years reshaped the way the British Crown approached piracy, leading directly to the Piracy Act of 1717, which made piracy a hanging offense without the need for trial. His blunderbuss became a symbol. Museums like the Mariners Museum in Newport News preserve examples of naval flintlocks from this period. Queen Anne's Revenge herself was located off the coast of North Carolina in 1996, and ongoing work has recovered more than 400,000 artifacts, including fragments of firearms and weapons consistent with the pirate arsenal. Modern reproduction blunderbusses are still manufactured today, chambered for black powder shooting. Anyone who has stood downrange of a black powder discharge understands immediately why sailors surrendered on sight. Blackbeard's weapons were perfectly matched to the kind of warfare he chose to fight. Short range, chaotic, psychological, and devastating. His 6 flintlock pistols gave him 6 shots without reloading. His cutlass and dagger covered the moments between, and his blunderbuss, loaded with whatever was available and fired into a crowd at 10 feet, was a weapon designed not just to kill, but to convince everyone watching that resisting was suicide. The myths made him a supernatural monster. The real Blackbeard was a trained, disciplined, deeply practical fighting man who chose his weapons with care and understood exactly what they could do. He survived every enemy who came at him face to face. That is the true story of his arsenal. If you made it this far, drop a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the weapons and warriors who shaped history. Share this with someone who thinks pirates were just stories.